This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast.
Kevin? Hello, kitties. What's new? I was just in the middle of my deadly dozen. First, I do a few pull-ups, then a few jumping hacks, and then I like to finish with a little die impact aerobics.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz.
And I'm Gil Adler.
But before Gil and I get started, please, if you're so inclined, because you like what we're doing, don't forget to hit the like button. And just as good, if not better, please subscribe. We promise to try and make it worth your while. And what the hell, it's free. Back to you guys. One of the great pleasures of doing Tales from the Crypt was working with the Crypt Keeper. It was first puppet I ever worked with. I think, was that the first puppet you ever worked with?
I think the first and only puppet I ever worked with.
The strange thing about the Crypt Keeper was, after you got to know him a little bit, he stopped being a puppet inside my head, I think inside your head.
Oh yeah, he was very much alive to me.
Writing for him and directing him was a very special experience.
Yeah.
Challenging in ways. Writing for him was not easy, as we'll talk about, and directing him had his challenges, but there were definitely Crypt Keeper segments that I'm more fond of than others, where I think there are a couple of great lines that I'm really proud of that we'll talk about. That to me was I think the thing, for the most part, as I think about it, that where the great lines were, but I also really liked when the Crypt Keeper worked with live actors, when he worked with WHOOPI. When he worked with Bill Sadler the couple of times, as we talked about.
It made us believe that he was real. It made us feel like he wasn't a puppet, he was real.
The person who really helped make him feel so real was, of course, John Kassir, the Crypt Keeper's voice.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
We decided to ask the question of ourselves and of John. Hey, were there Crypt Keeper segments that you liked the most? Were there any that you didn't like? And that's on the table. Here we go.
But I don't remember any that I was like, I wish they never made that one. There was definitely some episodes I thought that about, but not the Crypt Keeper sequences. The Crypt Keeper sequences were all brilliant. You guys did an amazing job with those. I loved every single one of them.
I just went back and I looked at every single one of them, all 90, however many.
Did you really?
I just did to prepare for this. And I looked at every single one from season 1 and season 2 before we got there. And
really?
Oh yeah. So, you can, if you watch them all over the course of season 2, season 1 was just the six episodes. It was like the first 3, then a back 3. And in a moment or two, I'll play for us the first one from season 1, episode 1. I'll play that in a second, but you can really watch over the course of season 2, which was like 18 episodes.
Crazy.
And you can watch the voices, the evolution of the character to a degree, and the voice.
Well, the voice was, I remember going in the first time with Kevin. Well, we can save this for online if you want. But,
we're doing it now.
We're doing it now.
Well, fuck me.
We've already started.
I remember going in the first time, and I started going, "Hello, kiddies, it's your old pal." And Kevin's like, "No."
That's Kevin Yagher, who created the Crypt Keeper puppet. Kevin also created the Chucky puppet, too. You should check out the episode we all 4 did together. Anyway, what were you saying, John?
The mouth moves about this fast. That much.
Yeah.
So that's why he talks slower.
Yeah.
Ominously.
Slow motion.
Poor little fellas. When I think of their child all those cute little maggots. Our story is about a man with nobler ambitions. He likes to kill human pests, and he does it in front of an audience. Now that's entertainment.
So funny that when I look back on this, because I've actually had people come up to me and go, "Did you do the original voice like the first couple of episodes? Because it seems different." And I said, "Well, you know, if you look at the puppet, you will see the reason why."
Yeah, it wouldn't have looked right to have him speak the way that he ended up speaking that way. Yeah. But over the first couple of episodes, you know, he is what he is. In the second season, like I said, you can see the evolution, but he's completely unwritten.
Yeah,
you can see, because they begin to dress him up, and they put him with some people. You know, well, there's the episode, the first time he ever appears with a live human is the episode with Arnold.
Yeah.
What's the matter with you? Want to keep that 90-pound corpse for the rest of your death?
Which I was on the set for, because just in case they needed somebody to speak to him off camera, you know, which I just wound up sitting there laughing my ass off the entire time.
It's really stiff, because they haven't, you know, the Crypt Keeper, they're treating him like a puppet.
Yeah, right.
and so and Arnold kind of leans into him and, well, if you do this and I'll do that.
Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
But you know what? That first one, The Man Who Was Death, that closing was one of my favorite closings.
So remember, boys and girls, safety first.
The Crypt Keeper is frying himself in an electric chair and getting off on it, which I just thought, just thought was brilliant. I mean, right out of the gate. Absolutely loved doing that one. And I mean, you know, right out of the, because it was an early one too. And I go, okay, this is where we're going with this.
Yeah. I mean, it's you get a sense of hey, there's some play in this character, but then, as I said, when you get into season 2, you kind of sense, was there one, who was writing it? Let me ask it that way. Was there one person, 2 people, 5 people writing? Who was responsible for writing scripts for the Crypt Keeper?
I have no idea. I showed up and they gave me the script, and then you know, if I came up with something and they liked it, they kept it. If they didn't, they didn't.
Yeah. I mean,
it was kind of that.
Yeah.
Because Kevin would work out specifically what he was going to do visually, so it was it was about that. And of course, the puppeteers. I mean, you know, the puppeteering was brilliant. I mean, but not very easy to do. You know, it took 3 guys just to make the face work.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's insane. Buraku style of puppetry. Usually, it's 2 puppeteers, and you know, the face, and I have a mask, and the guys are shrouded, and they do their movements. But you know, these guys were coordinating 4 or 5 people at the same time. 3 just...
Yeah, I think ultimately that we had 6, didn't we? Because it seemed to me when we came along, Alan, one of the things that I was really concerned about was matching the mouth, as you said earlier, John, matching the mouth with the words that the Crypt Keeper was saying as specifically as we could. And we rehearsed the hell out of that with the puppeteers. And the puppeteers were unbelievably talented guys. I mean,
oh, that's so great.
And they were so easy to work with. I mean, you would say something to them, and no one sort of laughed you off and said, "Are you out of your mind? This, you know, it's television." They would go, "Oh, right, okay, no, okay, we could do that. We could give us a minute. Just give us a minute. We'll reposition this." Well, and they would say, "Okay, we're going to sit over here. You're going to sit over there."
Sadly, the 2 I knew the best, Van Snowden and Brock Winkless, are both gone.
Yeah.
Van, because he was kind of the lead puppeteer on it, and we kept in touch over the years, you know, was so involved in what you know, he goes, okay, this is what John has brought across as the personality, guys. We're going to do this kind of thing. And Brock, because he literally we could do live interviews, and he could watch my mouth and follow. He had on that headgear.
Yeah.
And then he had the little toggles that moved the mandala and the rest of the mouth. So
Hello, kitties. How are
Yeah.
you?
you know, and but he got so good at it, when we did the Horror Hall of Fame, for instance, we were winging it. And, I mean, there were some lines written like, now something really scary, a commercial, stuff like that. But, he knew I would, if I started something that was kind of a classic line or something, he knew I was going to finish it and he would follow through on that. Otherwise, it was all, he would improvise it. And then eventually they came up with that, that technology that just, I thought was pretty kind of crappy, where it would move with my lips
Yeah.
because of a microphone. But that one, the eyes on it just look so dead compared to, Kevin's original
Crypt Keeper with the
Mm.
chucky eyes.
Mhm. Yeah, we were there every step of the way, from writing the damn shit to to working with you to record and turn it from shit into poetry. And then you go on set, you'd watch the puppeteers do what they do, and yeah, whoever was directing, if it was Gil or Kevin, they'd shout action, and Crypt Keeper would start to work. They'd beep, 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 and off he'd go, and he'd do the whole thing, and then come to the end of the take, and they'd yell cut, and the Crypt Keeper would sag back to the desk.
Don't do that. Don't break the illusion. Look at the difference before I comment on that. Look at the difference just between the original puppet,
Yeah.
And the original puppet there in the background, and
Yeah.
this one, which was this one this was they gave these out at the Bordello of Blood premiere. You may remember.
Sure.
But that was, you could see the difference just in the expression on the face.
Yeah.
When Kevin got a little more budget and got some time to do something with it, and and those eyes, I think he had told me, correct me if I'm wrong, that he originally had thought that they would be temporary because they were parts that he had in his shop already, but then it so brought this other thing to him that he just decided to keep it. But I remember auditioning, he had different versions of the Crypt Keeper. Some of them even had like noses and stuff, which was interesting. But I will say, I didn't always like going down while they were recording because of what you were just saying, where everybody was like, I didn't want it to be a puppet. And I think that it was really successful at not being a puppet to the public. But I will say this, Jack, God bless him, another one of our dear friends who was gone, Jack Wall, who put together so much of I used to call him the Crypt Keeper's pimp, although I never really liked that very much.
well, he did handle the Crypt Keeper's afterlife.
That's right. And, I forget where I was going with that, but,
Jack.
No, he had talked about like if we, had a future version of this show, we'd CGI him or something like that. And I was like, no. One of the reasons we have a bigger fan base now than we had when we even had the show originally on the air was because they were kids when they were watching it. Because what kid wasn't going to fucking walk by the TV set and watch a creepy puppet talking, whether they knew it was a puppet or not? There's something about something that should be inanimate or dead coming to life and moving that will always fascinate a child. It fascinated me. It was interesting when I got this part, and I thought to myself, this is not only that I just got a voice job, which turned out to be my biggest and first voice job, but it was also a cool character that I had grown up with that I loved as a kid, ironically, but also that it was one of the things that I used to love to do as a kid and make puppets and bring them to life, even though I wasn't the puppeteer. So it was, that was another, people are like, oh, it's so odd. Did you ever think that would be kind of like a legacy part for you? And I'd be like, no, I mean, I loved horror as a kid, but I never thought I would be in, that save that for the Vincent Prices and, John Barrymores and people like that. I'm not that guy, but
and yet
it all totally makes sense because this is the type of skill set that I was working on from the time I was 5, So I loved that it was a puppet. I would really be sad if, you know, there was an opportunity to do something, you know, with the Crypt Keeper in the future, and he was CGI'd or something.
Yeah, I agree. There was a spark of life. The thing that suddenly dissipated, which was what was so disconcerting, was that spark of life.
Yeah.
There was, you really,
death.
whatever it was, it's
Animated
like
death.
the light, as it were, came on in his eyes, as it were, and yeah, you surrendered to the magic.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
even directing him when I would say cut, and I'd see the SAG and the puppeteers would rest their hands because it would get, you know, pretty hot in there, and also it would be difficult to keep your hands. You know, they were pretty strong guys, and so they would rest. They needed to rest, and I would be very disappointed because I sort of believed what I was seeing and watching and directing, and felt no, don't take that illusion away from me. I want to live that.
You know, it was funny because they would feed what I would feed what they were doing, obviously, because, you know, they're doing it like a rock video where they would pre-record it and then they could rehearse to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then what they were doing. At first they would come in and, you know, Kevin would watch me what I did physically, and Van would watch what I did physically. And I don't know that I was doing exactly what it wound up being, but they started following that. So then what they started doing started feeding me. Like I would hold out the Crypt Keeper laugh just that much longer because they would do that, because they'd always do that. And,
Oh yeah. That little, what is that little chirrup at the end?
Yeah.
Across the course of season 2 there is the idea there already that the Crypt Keeper has a life beyond being the Crypt Keeper, because they'd be perhaps out of boredom. They began to wardrobe him in different things, like but there was never but they never committed to it. So there would be one line reference to, hey, here's why I'm dressed like this, and then it would like it disappeared, like he wasn't wearing it, like everything else was disconnected from. So they never committed all the way to the fact that they dressed him differently. It was, and that's kind of strange watching all of season 2, because when Gil and I finally came aboard, one of the things that we did was we committed to the whole idea of, all right, what's he do outside his life of being the Crypt Keeper? When he clocks out at the end of the day and he goes home, you know, what does he do? You know, who are his friends? What are his hobbies? Does he have a side gig? You know, HBO paid for shit, man. You know,
well, that was one of the big conversations we had. You know, when we first went in and talked to Joel about it, he said, "Well, you know, it's a hit show. It's very successful." And I said, "Yeah, it's very good, but you know, I would do. Alan and I would like to do 3 things differently. And if you think those ideas are good, then we're the right people for it. And if you think those ideas are bad, I'm not here to argue with you about it. But then we wouldn't do the show."
Yeah.
And so one of those was, you know, we thought that they were wasting the Crypt Keeper and they didn't have a personality. And we said, you know, we wanted to give him a personality, whether he be a chiropractor or a dentist or running for president or what. We just wanted to have him, and we wanted to look the part. So we would dress him for that part. And, you know, I remember Joel listening to me. He was sitting at his desk listening to me, sort of nodding and looking right through me, like, yeah, you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about?
Right. And then at the end he said, okay, well, you know, if you want to do that, sure, you can do that. Go, yeah.
You know, the amazing thing though too was that you guys also keyed into what I could do with it. I mean, when you guys started writing it, it gave me the opportunity to do the stuff that I had been doing as an actor and a stand-up comic and that kind of thing. Whether it was, you know, him as Marlon Brando.
Stella!
For me, it was such a challenge the first time that I had to write the Crypt Keeper, because it was the job that I really wanted. And it was a terrifying job because, okay, how do you fucking do this? But I think the first line that I wrote that was really okay. All right, I think I can find these things in Carrion Death, which is one of the first episodes that we did while we were there.
Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah, the Crypt Keeper enters as a motorcycle cop, and we played the gag all the way through, the head and the tail. And there's the first decent line I wrote set up like this.
The buzzards, except I like my meat a little more well done. Cook 'em, Dano.
Early in that first season, I think there was another really funny early line, the top billing episode.
Good evening, culture vultures, and welcome to another installment of Mashed to Pieces Theater.
I didn't write that. Todd Holland did. He said, can I take a crack at the Crypt Keeper segment? I hadn't fully taken ownership of it yet. So I went, sure. And
why not?
And Todd wrote he wrote half that segment, and it's really good. He wrote the Mashed to Pieces Theater, and yeah, he's the only other person while I was there that wrote something that stayed. People suggested stuff all the time. People would come to me all the time with great ideas, stuff the Crypt Keeper should say. And you can imagine how lethally awful.
And also how he should be portrayed. I mean, we had people come in and say, he should, once we started having him play different characters, a dentist, a doctor, whatever, people would come up to us all the time and say, what about this? What about that? How about if he's this? How about if he's a serial killer? How about if...
Well, I love that there was some things that were also, timely in terms of what was going on TV. Like, this is your brain on drugs.
This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. And this is your brain after watching Tales from the Crypt.
Once we were liberated to go wherever we wanted to go, and wherever the ideas would take, sometimes we would try to attach it to the episode if we could. But I would make lists, huge lists of things that he could do, people he could know, and I'd choose the ones, and then I'd begin to think about, all right, I'd make lists of words. Okay, words that were associated if he was a cab driver. Okay, what are words associated with driving a cab? And I would try to find cab driver associated words that could be cryptified. As a hack. All right, that's an easy one. And if the subject immediately suggested 3 or 4 half decent ones, then I'd commit to it, and I'd think, okay, I'll spend the next couple hours, banging my head against this fucking wall. But people, and people would make some interesting suggestions, and there were a lot of things that were intriguing. But if I couldn't come up with the list of words that would lend themselves to being cryptified.
All right, creeps, it's Fourth and Ghoul. They're probably expecting us to run a ghost pattern, so let's run a scream pass instead. Wanna play doctor? Then open wide and say,
There were segments that were great, and there were segments where I don't know, man. It wasn't there on the page, and thank goodness there was you, because you rescued an awful lot of segments that.
Please don't ever apologize. This is one of the most consistently wonderful parts of any show, and frankly, it's the thing that distinguishes it from any other anthology series. Is the Crypt Keeper came to life and was not only let this is supposed to be fun, which is again why kids wound up so. I say this at the conventions. Fan will come up and go, "Oh my God, you're my childhood," and it's so weird to hear that because it's freaking Tales from the Crypt. I go, "Well, it was my childhood too, but in a different kind of way, And you're like, well, and I jokingly say, well, the Crypt Keeper is kind of the gateway drug to horror, and they're like, and they don't laugh. They go, Yeah, that's actually true with me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm the one that winds up laughing at my own joke because they're not. They actually take that to heart.
Yeah.
They think they say, because now I say it to them seriously because that's what it is. But the Crypt Keeper was successful for that reason. He's kind of like, and people were like, oh, sometimes I always, like my parents would let me watch the sequences, the opening sequences, but they wouldn't necessarily let me watch the episodes. I, of course, now watch them over and over and over again. And I go, well, the fun thing about the Crypt Keeper was, you go, when you're a kid, you're like, people are like, let's go on that roller coaster. And you're like, I'm not going on that thing. And then you finally go on one and you go, I want one bigger. I want one scarier, And the Crypt Keeper was kind of like that ride up to the top, which is always good because you don't know what's coming after it. And he was always that. He always set it up, So whatever, level of success that you felt you got each week on it, it was always successful in that way of setting up what you
But
were about to see.
we are perfectionists.
Of course,
The Crypt Keeper had one particular early fan, Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes.
And Whoopi was such a fan that when she did the show, she insisted that she do the Crypt Keeper segment as well.
We were friends at that time, actually. We were shooting on sound stages. I don't know if you knew this, but she was shooting Gene Stapleton.
Baghdad Cafe.
She was on the sound stage next to where I was shooting FM, which was Alan Burns' Dan Wilcox series. And Alan Burns had created Mary Tyler Moore and all that. And I was working with Robert Hayes. And I mean, we were having such a great time. And I would have lunch with Whoopi and we became friends. And she was like, oh, I got to do an HBO special with you. And you wouldn't have believed how excited she was when she was going to do Tales from the Crypt.
I can. She was wonderful. I mean, really, when she came to work with us, she worked with us the week, that weekend she won the Oscar.
I didn't realize
it was that she had just won the Oscar, and then the next day, more or less, she went to work for us.
Wow.
She
didn't remember that.
Yeah. And so, we were shooting at the A1 Glow Pasta Factory, and it's not there anymore, in Culver City, but she came in and she came to the office. My assistant came to me. She said, Whoopi Goldberg would like to read some comics. And I went, oh, okay. And I went out to my office, and there's Whoopi. She said, yeah, I just like to read some of the comics. I said, oh, well, look, we've got all of them in hardbound in our boardroom. I'll send them over to your dressing room. She said, no, I'll read them here. I said, oh, okay, I'll set you up in the boardroom. I said, no, I don't want to go in the boardroom. I'll sit right here. Here, we're sitting in the middle of the hallway. She said, no, here's real good. Okay. So we get the most comfortable chair in the whole office, and we put it right there where she wanted, right there in the hallway. And we got her a whole stack of the hardbound Tales from the Crypt, the old classic comic books, and put them right there in the hallway. And she agreed that we get her a drink. So we got her a drink, and she sat there, and the most recent Oscar winner for Best Supporting Actress was sitting there in our hallway reading comic books as people walk back and forth, stopping to. Is that Whoopi Goldberg just sitting there? It was such a strange thing, but she's lovely, salt of the earth, as genuine a human being as there could ever be.
Whoopi, it's a pleasure to meet you. I want you to know that I loved your movie, The Killer Purple.
That's color purple, Crypt Keeper.
Oh, right. Well, congratulations on winning that Academy Award.
Well, thanks, but it's actually called an Academy Award.
Whatever. Look, it's a pleasure to meet a big star like you.
Now, you're a pretty big star. I mean, I'd love it if you'd be in my next film.
Really?
Yeah, it's just a bit part.
I'm flattered.
But you don't know what bit I want.
Well, as long as I don't wind up on the cutting room floor. Okay.
There's so many great stories associated with EC Comics, not just our show, and a good buddy of mine, Ari Gross, who you may know as an actor, wonderful actor, Soul Man, and was on the Ellen DeGeneres show. I mean, wonderful actor. And just one of my dearest best friends related a story to me when he was a kid. He was in New York with a friend, and he must have been like, I don't know, I think he said 13 or so, maybe younger than that. And they were walking by, and they saw the EC Comics offices, and they just walked in, and nobody stopped them. And they go, "Hey, how are you guys? What's going on?" He goes, "Oh, we love these comic books, and Mad Magazine and Tales, And they went, and the next thing you know, Bill Gaines comes out and brings them into his office and gives them some comic books. And, just they hung out in the EC Comic offices and just walked in unannounced. Nobody stopped them or anything. They just like embraced them and made it like a memorable experience for them.
They got to hang out with the usual gang of idiots.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
That
was it.
Yeah.
Alfred E. Newman might as well just have been there, which you look like these days, by the way. I just wanted to let you know. He's
I hope you're talking to Alan about that, not me.
Yes, I am. With a beard.
you.
No, I'm kidding. If you had freckles and red hair. No, but seriously, I always feel an obligation to make it entertaining for people when they, come see me at, convention. And I'm sure you feel the same way when you meet fans and stuff. It's, not necessarily with other things that I've done. I just feel a responsibility to a franchise that started long before me, long before us. The fact that people go, "Yeah, but you are the Crypt Keeper." I go, I'm an aspect of the Crypt Keeper. Yeah, I voiced it, and, a certain amount of my personality came through in that and that kind of thing. But, if Kevin hadn't created what he created and you guys hadn't written what you've written, the Crypt Keeper wouldn't, have been, and it hadn't been produced by the biggest guys in the business and stars involved, and HBO went past the first 3 episodes, which they weren't going to do, and all these things, it wouldn't have been what it was,
And we would not be having this conversation today.
I know. People are like, wow, I guess, people, you go, what will people remember you for when you work in our business, when you do so many different things? And, I certainly, got paid about as little as anything I've ever got paid for, to do it. But I loved doing it. And, people are like, well, what would you do different? I was like, I used to do sitcoms and stuff like that where I would be able to buy a house on what they paid me. And, and the people were involved were like really big people and this kind of thing. And you were expecting it to run, 9 years and go into syndication and never have to work again if you didn't want to. And this kind of thing. But I would mention it to you now and you wouldn't even say you ever even heard of it, let alone remember it. So that kind of thing happening, you just don't know. But the right things, they kind of come to the, rise to the top for you. At least it did for me. And, whether it was the things that I got hugely rich off of, but the other day I was doing a telethon with Seth Rubitsky, who has a show interviewing Broadway stars, and they were doing a telethon for what used to be the Actors Fund, because they're bleeding money helping people out during the actors strike. And John Cryer showed up with his wife and donated $50,000 to match whatever other people did, and Steven Weber and my good buddy Steven Weber and some other people were all showing up, and Annette Bening was the co-host with him. And, I was sitting there in the room talking and I'm like, okay, Annette probably knows who I am, but has probably never met me, probably couldn't have picked me out of a lineup. And, that didn't fall far. That was, on my mind at that moment. I went, you know what? I'm the reason why we're here for this telethon as much as any other actor, because I'm the actor that keeps working, and you may not have even recognized me walking down the street, but you will probably recognize at least 24 characters that I would spiel off on my list of favorite characters immediately. And I said, that's, we're bringing you that kind of entertainment on that level, and we're behind the scenes and we're not behind the scenes. and and the reason that this might be successful, that might be successful, involves all those elements, but ultimately can't be done without the writers and the actors. Can't be done. That's the art part.
The notion that AI could replace us is, AI can do a lot of things and a lot of great things, and AI very much has a place, but AI can never have a soul, because it's funny. I think of there's a line from Macbeth. Macbeth thinks he's going to be okay because the person who's going to kill him was not from woman born.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out the guy's going to kill him. He was a breech birth. He was a cesarean. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, stupid. Yeah,
Yeah.
you think you're getting away with that? It's that kind of machination.
Yeah.
Is at play here.
How many times have you been asked, as we've been asked, tell the truth, who really plays the Crypt Keeper? And I would look at people and I'd go, what do you mean? And they would go, no, tell us the truth. What's the name of the actor? And I would say, no, it was a puppet. And they'd go, no, come on. We know it was an actor. And I would go, and it wasn't an actor. It was a puppet with 6 puppeteers. It took 6 guys to make it look like it was real.
Oh, yeah.
And people for years wouldn't believe me. They would go, oh, you're just going to keep that a secret, aren't you?
Yeah. That's because the elements married really well. And,
Yeah.
I've had people all the time come up to me and go, how long did it take you to get into that makeup? I said, well, first I had to lose 60 pounds.
Really?
And
You should have seen
then
the diet, man. It was awful. Living a crash diet.
during the pandemic, I was going to have a guy make me a half mask. I had one made that's just like a regular mask that I could put on the bottom of my face,
Yeah.
which is kind of fun. But I wanted somebody to make like a molded mask to go over my face that had an open space, but that, I could put a regular mask in between. And so for my own safety, I could go and the fans would have something fun to take photos with that still looked like the Crypt Keeper, even though we were all wearing masks. And I was like, the guy kept trying to make it and he was really good, but everything that he made just looked too built out on my face, because there's no way you could make me look like the skull underneath the skin,
Right.
not a skull on top of the skin.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a
You know?
subtraction,
Yeah,
not an
exactly.
addition. And if you add, you're going further away from the subtraction.
And that's the brilliance of Kevin Yagher. Kevin Yagher bringing to life something that's, because people will bring all kinds of stuff to me that kind of looks like the Crypt Keeper, and basically it's because he's a skull with some flesh on it. So pretty much any skull you have, if you bring the personality to it, it can be, something almost as fun as the Crypt Keeper. It's so funny because so many people, they don't have Funko Pops of the Crypt Keeper unless there's, because of the rights issues and all that stuff.
Right.
There's no Funko Pops, which everybody likes to collect. There are people that will make custom ones, so there's a few that people have brought me. But a lot of other people bring me the Creep from Creep Show because it kind of looks like the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
And I know people that do voice work or actors or whatever. They go, that's not me, and they wouldn't sign it. I don't want to disappoint them, so I just I sign it and I put the Crypt Keeper so they know that that's what it is that I signed it for. As like, hey, you want me to sign a napkin, I'll sign a napkin. You want me to sign the Creep, I'll sign the Creep. It's not my character, but it's what it is.
While we're in this fade out, Gil and I and lots of the original Tales from the Crypt team will be appearing at the 2nd annual HorrorCon at the Los Angeles Convention Center this coming September 30th and October 1st. Come join us if you're in LA. The panel that we're going to do is going to be called Lightning in a Bottle: How Tales from the Crypt Changed TV Forever.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And we have Greg Melton will be there. I think Todd might be there for
Awesome.
Todd.
How great.
Sherry Rose, Ed Tapia, Greg Melton. Did I mention him? So we're going to have the crew there. When we were first dancing with them about it, they said, well, actors. And finally we said, actors showed up for a couple of days and then left. They really had no idea how the magic got made at Tales from the Crypt. And the story that we want to tell is really, it's just us sitting up there. And I said, you know, anyone who goes will walk away blown away by what a great bunch of stories. So they will not be unhappy. And at the end of the day, they went, yeah, you're right. That's because really, Tales from the Crypt, for 100 strange reasons, it did. We changed HBO from being, it's not TV, it's HBO. You know, I'd never heard that story until you told it to us. And
I was there, so
yeah.
I was just like, that's bizarre. That's so weird. You know?
HBO claimed, but the HBO saw the genius of that line. Yes, don't be TV, be something other than TV. And that's really what we were, because, hey, First and 10 and the Brian Ben show, you know, nice shows, but these were sitcoms with tits and the word fuck.
And Zagreb Shkanuski, the Bulgaria field goal kicker.
Yes, of course, most importantly. But aside from that,
Kaczynski. One of my first cameos, by the way, somebody asked me to do that character.
Oh wow.
Not the Crypt Keeper. I was like, really? I went and found the jersey and I put it up on the door like I was in a locker room, and I did like, hey, I can still kick, you know. I always love that line, without resistance there is no art. Because, you know, like I remember listening to some of the art directors, you know, when we had a couple of those, you know, Todd had put together a couple of the screenings of Demon Night and stuff like that. Some of the art directors showing up or being interviewed and that kind of thing, or directors talking about how they had no money to do anything. And they were doing stuff like hanging cardboard in front of here that looked like Spanish moss. So it looked like a frame out of a comic book.
Yeah.
You know, if you had somebody doing that for you and that kind of thing and spending the money, it wouldn't have been any better. But if you're asked to be creative, I mean, how many times have you seen some kid who won Sundance because they had no money and they had been thinking and working on this project for half their life, and they finally made it because they were using all their artistic juices to make something come together. And the next thing you know, they're given $100 million to make something. It's a piece of shit because they have to manipulate a studio. They have to beg somebody to do it their way. They have to do all these different things, and you know, and none of it has any of the artistic little mothers of invention that they needed to create.
Have you ever heard Danny Boyle talk about making Train Spotting?
No.
And it's
how do you talk an actor to stick their head in the toilet and shit
well,
like 10 times in one movie? It's
amazing, but it's so imaginatively shot. There are some really clever shots, and they did this really with, it's just theater craft, nothing but theater craft. Some of the coolest effects, you know, one of the crawling effect, it's pure theater craft. They had no money to make that movie with, literally nothing.
Yeah.
And they couldn't rely on money or special effects. They had to rely on their own creativity.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference.
And some really fine actors too, who now have careers. You know, look at Ewan McGregor, Train Spotting to Tales from the Crypt.
Hey, there you go.
He just went up and up and up.
That's it.
As we were doing Crypt Keeper segments, what was it that made segments better, or what made them memorable in your head, John?
You know, just how much fun people put them into them. I love the scenarios, like you said. I love when there was a scenario for the Crypt Keeper. He was in the middle of something in his day. Like I love that he was sitting there playing golf, what looked like a Crypt Keeper-ish putt-putt golf course. He hits the ball into a skull. He goes,
"What do you know? Pa for the corpse."
And that line was the payoff to this line.
"That's just my caddy, Juan. He got me teed off while I was playing around, so I shot a hole in Juan."
You know,
that is one of my favorite. That was another one of those lines where I thought, Man, there should be an award for this.
Yeah,
That's a fucking hilarious line.
But but at the same time, it visually looked like a Rube Goldberg trick.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Oh,
it
yeah,
was,
yeah.
You know, I mean, everything. You know, so that kind of stuff was really fun for me. You know, as it evolved into, hey, John, you know, do you do an impersonation of Howard Stern? Not really, but we'll come up with
It's
something.
the top of the hour. Time for your favorite morning man. What's the matter? You've never seen a shock jock before?
Obviously, you would want it to play into the episode. Some of them play really darkly into the episode, and then others, you know, are just kind of a fun thing on their own. You know, don't necessarily.
We had the Crypt Keeper play a Sam Spade character. You know, we did a Sam Spade kind of episode. Bob Zemeckis' You Murderer, but the intro to that is Forrest Gump.
Right.
Crypt Keeper plays Forrest Gump, which is great. I mean, how much fun was that?
Hello. How are you? I'm Forrest Gump. Hi. Care for a chocolate? You sure? Mummy always said life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Sometimes you get a fudge scream. Sometimes you get new guts. Know what else Mummy said? She said, scary is as scary does.
Having them put Alfred Hitchcock in it.
Right.
Oh my God.
And, you know, which is just like a play on a play on a play. I mean, he would put himself in his movies, and here was Bob Zemeckis putting Alfred, you know, using the technology that he used in Forrest Gump on Tales from the Crypt as Forrest Gump to introduce his segment. I just thought it was great.
Yeah, it's not TV, it's HBO, man.
That's it. People are always asking me, why is it not streaming? I was like, there's no reason why it shouldn't be. You know, there's no reason for it. It's just because nobody's watching the store. You know, I mean, there's nobody there to make sure it happens.
Well, you can watch it all for free now on
YouTube.
On YouTube, it doesn't look well. There are people who've done HD versions on YouTube, so you can watch it HD. But
there's a guy putting together a Blu-ray version of the show.
Yeah.
Just because he wanted it so badly, and he offered it up to other people.
He's just doing it.
You're like, why isn't it in Blu-ray? I go, because somebody got to spend money to do it. There's nobody interested in doing that. You know, it's like, what else can I say? You know, but it is what it is. You know, I mean, this is the same thing with every other. There's so many shows that could be back or redone or this kind of thing, but. You know, Tales from the Crypt is there. There's 93 episodes.
Yeah.
You know, why are they not, you know, running? Why doesn't HBO have them? They could license them for a song, I'm sure.
Yeah.
For a song.
And
and you know why they don't own them, right? They don't own Tales from the Crypt. You know why they don't own the episodes?
Who
HBO. HBO or their earlier shows. You don't see the earlier shows on HBO. And this is the reason it was explained to me. I think it was Jack that explained this to me. Back in the day, HBO was a new series, and they would give people money to make a show, part of the money. And every season they would pick it up, they give them less and less of the money. Mm-hmm. The money would have to come from somewhere else. But in exchange, the person who was making the show got to keep the rights to the show in order to resell it and get their money back, or sell it and to get the money from syndication or from London or, you know, from England or from wherever you guys got the money from each season. But as a result, they don't own any of their early shows. First and 10, they don't own.
They saw no value in their own content.
Well, they couldn't afford their own content. They couldn't afford to give you the full budget and own it. They had to negotiate it they had to negotiate for you to come up with the money some other way. So that's why these shows are, I mean, for somebody like Tales from the Crypt, if they knew that rather than licensing it for $10 an episode to Sci-Fi Network or Chiller Channel, now would be the time to, I mean, obviously they did to Fox, and they probably got.
Yeah. It was probably the first sort of deficit partner that ever existed on the thing. The irony was, after the second season, because HBO was just putting out the money, they were cash flowing the whole enterprise, and they ended up $1 million over budget. And we've told this story.
Doing shows like Sopranos, which were huge budgets, or Game of Thrones, which was an astronomical budget. Now they can't. They're I have no idea whether they're liquid at all anymore.
Yeah.
It was just too bad, because they're still my favorite, one of my favorite networks. I love Max. I love HBO Max and Max. I mean, they're still doing great content, but in order for them to come up with the money to create their own content again, that's a lot of money.
I always felt rather honored that we were on HBO and not regular TV.
Oh yeah, the show wouldn't have been what it is.
That people paid a subscription to watch our show.
Yeah.
It was you had to go outside the box, as it were,
or stole cable.
Well, hey, hey, man, those that can.
You used to pay the guy who would stall your cable to give him $200 to like hook you up. I never did that.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Hey, Red. Hey, Red.
You talking to me?
Yeah.
You better be talking to me, because if that Crypt Keeper's talking to me,
that's one we never did. We never had the Crypt Keeper play De Niro.
He could have done it too.
Yeah, we should have.
Talking to me?
Yeah.
Are you talking to me?
It's funny. We
better be fucking talking to me.
We talked about him as Bogey. He's also he looked at Lennon. John Lennon in the Beatles. He played Elvis.
Can't carry a tune? That's okay. I'm just playing by ear myself.
My favorites were the ones where he seemed real. I mean, even when I was shooting it, if he seemed real, like a real character, real person, I really got off on that, and I loved it. In fact, some of I think on both Bordello and on Demon Knight, the movies, where we actually tried to have him walk across the studio or walk across the set and get him out of the chair. That to me was exciting, because again, I felt like I'm giving the audience something more than we had given them in the past. And, we're telling them he's a real character. He's real.
Yeah, for sure. It's totally true. No, but I agree with you, Gil. There's some episodes where he's vulnerable and he's himself.
Yeah.
And he's just like, how do I get myself out of this mess kind of scenarios.
Right.
And you just totally forget that he's anything but a character you've been watching every week in a situation. Even if he's like standing up there doing stand-up and he's bombing.
I tell you, ladies and germs, that girlfriend of mine makes me so crazy. She told me she thought she'd look good in something long and flowing. So I threw her in the Mississippi. And how about that Ernest Hemingway, always shooting his mouth off? Ooh. Hello? Anybody? I know you're out there, folks. I can hear you bleeding. Is this on?
It is so fucking funny because he bombs.
Yeah, it's great.
It's
doesn't
wonderful.
care. Doesn't care.
Is this mic on? I know you're out there, ladies and germs. I can hear you bleeding.
I can hear you bleeding.
Love that. Absolutely love that.
Good stuff.
There was a segment where you featured Gil, the Home Chopping Network, where I think you're Mr. Oscar de la Renta.
afraid our designer hanger offer has expired.
I saw that recently. Yeah.
There was one where I think he was a dentist and I was the patient.
Frankly, your hack's rays look terrible. You've got to pay closer attention to your oral hygiene, or you'll end up looking like me.
In the tail, he ends up pulling my tongue out.
Yeah, those are the days, Alan, we would stop at nothing.
Surely we do anything.
They would
for a
hang
laugh.
me, they would pull your teeth out, and we would laugh it off and go, you know, is the audience going to really buy this, or are we going to get fired tomorrow?
And don't forget that time the Crypt Keeper took a chainsaw to Joel.
It's my producer's birthday. He's always wanted final cut. And that's exactly what he's getting.
There were a couple, especially the earlier ones, when we did have to make him slower and honestly, that were really kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Example, the Christmas episode with that horrific
Yeah.
Santa Claus mask on his face.
And that's uncomfortable.
Is there other ones that you can think of that had that kind of tone to it? You know,
Once we took over, I think we kind of blew that apart because he stopped
Well,
being menacing.
That was one of the things, again, the conversation with Joel was how and what to do with the Crypt Keeper and how to use him.
Yeah.
And we told him, you know, you light him very darkly. He's in a shroud. He's not very accessible. You know, we think the audience should like him, should have a relationship with him. And
Wouldn't he be
basically-
great as a mime? Come on, the Crypt Keeper as a mime.
And wouldn't it be great if, you know, basically he was the punctuation that said, look, we just tried to scare the shit out of you, but it's okay. You don't have to look under the bed and you can go to sleep.
yeah.
And that's really what we really wanted to do. And again, they, you know, they were really, they just really wanted us to do it to make up the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
at the
almost
end of the
anything
day.
we said, you know, they were saying, yeah, no problem, no problem.
Well, you know, it's part of its longevity because these, you know, the people tell me is like, first I was, you know, scared as shit from this thing, but I grew to love him and, you know, grew for him to be my buddy. And so many people
Yeah.
are like, you know, there's the jokes that come in. Oh, you know, we used to tell my sister he was her boyfriend because she was so into him, you know, or the little kids would be like, carry the doll around and go, this is my baby, you know, and that kind of stuff. Because it was something really huggable and lovable about him, you know, and everything from the baby blue eyes to the
He returned that favor at the end of the Oils Well That Ends Well episode. That at the tail of that, he focuses in on one of the actors in the episode.
He's been a real bitch. Oh, shit!
Looks like business is really booming for Carl and Gina. Talk about flame and fortune. You know, kiddies, there's something about this little tale that interests me.
Well, I'll be damned.
I think it's this actor. Yes. The others are good, but this one, we're talking a real bleeding man type. He's a regular
gory Cooper. A Robert Redford.
And that voice, I could swear it reminds me of someone I know.
You know, I worked really hard to come in and I saved my voice to do, yeah, I think it has, other than the opening where he screams out of the casket, it may be my biggest screaming laugh in any of the episodes. I saved it just for that episode. Abascal was like, okay, you're going to pop out of a casket. I go, you mean like the Crypt Keeper does? Yes. And he goes, and can you do like a Crypt Keeper-ish type of laugh at this moment? I think we went back and even looped it more so that it would even sound more specifically like the Crypt Keeper. Every time I run into Lou Diamond Phillips, he's always like, God, I had fun working on that with you. And all those guys, you know, Alan Ruck.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Very good. Very good in the episode.
And of course, Rory Calhoun.
Rory Calhoun. That's right.
Cowboy Star and Noble Wellingham. All these, so many of these guys are gone.
Yeah. I think we were the last thing that Rory Calhoun did.
Yeah. And Priscilla Presley was a doll.
Oh,
She couldn't
she
have
was
been
terrific.
sweeter.
Nimmerfro was because Nimmerfro wrote the script. I think one of the best episodes he did. He was so delighted that he could get Priscilla Presley to speak the word carpet munching. I ain't no carpet muncher.
I ain't no carpet muncher, Larry.
The fact that he had her speaking that line of dialogue, I think that might have been the proudest moment in his whole career. There were lines where I thought, I can hardly wait for John to read this, not just read this, but to read it for the first time. And I thought, he'll really like this. He'll really like this. I part of what as I wrote them, what I really wanted to do once we had got going was to try to make you laugh. That really was my goal.
It worked too, because I remember auditioning for Kevin and he was laughing so hard when I started doing the voice that I started laughing because I was like, vamping some other puns and stuff for him. And so I was like, in the back of my mind, I thought, great, he laughs at his own jokes. Perfect. So the fact that anytime I performed any of the things you wrote and I was laughing at those moments, it was because I did truly find them funny myself. So that's to you guys.
Well, for me, the trick was, like I said, the question was, what does he do when he's not being the Crypt Keeper? But okay, then I don't know who he is per se, because he's not that kind of character, but he's got a spirit that really was the guiding principle.
Pun intended.
Indeed. And you just had to buy into the spirit and that he was totally anarchic.
Yeah.
And
he felt like he could get away with anything. I always loved in the Christmas album, that he where he's doing the Old Lang Syne, singing and all the people he parties with.
Yeah.
I just love that because that kind of sums him up. It makes you imagine him living in partying with other people in some other version of Hollywood.
Well, at the end of the day, we did it because he recorded a Christmas album, and at the end of I think it's the end of The Pit.
There, all done. Now I'll have a little eggnog, listen to a few holiday tunes, and wait for Santa Claus to come. Maybe I should throw another Yule log on the fire.
I wonder how Yule will feel about that.
The Crypt Keeper is putting up Christmas decorations, and there, among the decorations, is our CD.
Yeah, exactly.
I had watched, before we ever did the show, some of the early episodes, and the Crypt Keeper just wasn't written in that second season. To watch him evolve, as I did the research, from really that very dark little character in the first episode to really the franchise player that he became at the end of the day, filled with, and he had a certain life at the beginning.
Yeah, no, it was great. He had a different kind of life.
Yeah. And it wasn't.
It was good that he evolved through the series. I think people had something to look forward to watch them do that. It certainly was fun for me. I mean, very often people were like, "Well, why does he talk different?" I go, he evolved. I will say that he evolved, but yes, it certainly had to do with that the puppet's mouth couldn't move. And I like to reduce it to that in some way. But you're right. It also had to do with, how he was perceived. And you look at any series, go look at the early version of Friends.
They
seem so much more, and they're not two-dimensional. When you watched them, you didn't think they were two-dimensional. But compared to what they became over at the end of the series, they seemed almost two-dimensional compared to that, so you find the character as you go. That's one of the beauties of doing a series, and playing a character for a long period of time.
Here
is fleshing him out over time, but
as it were,
as it will be. But
John, as always, thank you for spending time and talking about the good old days.
The good old days, man. They seem like they were yesterday.
Yeah, they do. They don't seem that far off.
Well, you have a long life ahead of you, and an even longer death.
And on that bombshell.